All right, let's create a new component. So ng-gc change-password. Beautiful. Now let's go to our change password component. I'm going to delete the stuff that we don't need. So implement onInit. Let's delete this, as well as the constructor and ng-onInit methods. So here I'm going to declare a field form of type form group. Then I'm going to add a constructor. Here I'm going to inject a form builder object, so FB of type form builder. And then use this form builder to initialize the form field. So this.form equals FB.group. Here we're going to have three controls. Old password. We set this to an empty string and also add the required validator here. So validators.required. Now let's import this type on the top. Beautiful. And then I'm going to duplicate this twice and change the name of these keys to new password and confirm password. All right, so this is our form up to this point. Now let's go to our template. So change password.html. I'm going to add a form here. We don't need the action attribute. Instead, we need to use property binding with form group directive and bind this to the form field that we created earlier. Now, inside this div, we need three input fields. So the typical bootstrap layout, we need a div with the class form-group. Inside this div, we need a label. And next to that, we need an input of type password with the class form-control. Now we need three of these. So I'm going to put this expression in parentheses times 3. And then next to that, we're going to have a button with two classes, btn and btn-primary. Tab. So this is our layout. 3 form groups and a button. Let's add the labels here. So the button should be change password. The first label should be old password. The second should be new password. And the last one should be confirm password. All right, now we need to associate each input field with a form control object that we created in our component. So here I'm going to set form control name to old password. And then I'm going to copy this and apply to other input fields as well. So the second one is new password. And the last one is confirm password. Confirm password. So now let's use this change password component on app.html. So we go to app.html, add change password. Actually, I forgot to change the selector for this component. So let's go to change password.ts and change the selector to change password. Now back in the browser, okay, this is our form, beautiful. Now if I put the focus here and tab, we get this red border, so the validation is working. So next we need to add the validation errors. So back in our template, after each input field, I'm going to add a div for validation errors. So a div with the class alert and alert-danger. You want to render this only if this old password field is touched and is invalid. Now we can get access to this control using form.get old password, but this is a little bit lengthy. So I'm going to cut this here and move it into a property in our component. So back in our component, I'm going to declare 3 properties here. So get old password. And here we return this .form.get old password. Okay. And then I'm going to duplicate this twice, change this to new password and confirm password. And of course, we need to change these labels here as well. So new password and confirm password. Okay. Now back in the template, we want to render this div if old password is touched and it's invalid. Invalid, like this. And here I'm going to add the validation error. So old password is required. Well, actually we have two types of validation errors. One is for the required and the other is the async validator, which we haven't implemented yet. So here we need multiple divs, each for a different validation error. So I'm going to wrap this with a div and render this only if old password has this error, errors.required. Okay. Now I'm going to select this block and copy it for the new password and confirm password fields. So here's the new password. Let's add this here and change the expression. So we need to change old password to new password. Now to speed things up, I'm going to do multi-cursor editing. So I press Command and D on Mac, or you can press Control D on Windows. Now old password is selected. One more time. And then we can change all three of these to new password in one go. And then escape. Finally, let's change the label to new password is required. And one more time, I'm going to copy this for the confirm password field. Here it is. One more time, multi-cursor editing. So Command and D, one more time, and change this to confirm password. Escape, beautiful. And finally, confirm password is required. Now let's test the application up to this point. Save. Now my code is automatically reformatted in a bad way, and this is because of a plugin I just installed before recording this video. So don't worry about this. Let's go back to the browser. So focus, tab, tab, tab. We get 3 validation errors for required fields. Beautiful. Now let's implement the async validator for the old password. So in the change password folder, I'm going to add a new file. Call this password.validators.ts. Here I'm going to export a class called password validators. Now let's add the first validator for the old password. So a static method called valid old password. This takes a control of type abstract control and returns a promise. Now we can explicitly set the promise here, but it's really not required in this case, so we can keep the code a little bit cleaner. So let's import the abstract control class from the top. Beautiful. So here let's return a promise. Here we add 2 parameters, resolve and reject. And because in this case we are not going to use reject, we can simplify this code and add only the resolve parameter, like this. Now let's implement a simple rule. So if control.value doesn't equal 1, 2, 3, 4, we want to return the validation errors object. The key should be valid old password, and the value is true. Now in this particular example, I don't like the name of this key here to be valid old password, because when we use this in our template, it looks really odd. Let me show you why. Let's go to our change password.html template. So this is where we add the validation errors for the old password field. I'm going to duplicate this div and change this ngIf to old password.errors.valid old password. It's kind of weird because this is telling me that we have a valid old password. So it's better to call this key invalid old password. Okay. And then we can change the error message to old password is invalid. Now back to our validator. So here I want to change the name of this key to invalid old password. And by the way, because we are inside the promise, we shouldn't really return a value. Instead, we should call the resolve function. Okay. Now, otherwise, we want to resolve null. So this is our async validator. Now we need to add this to our component. So change password.ts. Here's our old password control. As the third element in this array, we can add all the async validators. So I'm going to add password validators dot valid old password. Now to make this more readable, I'm going to break this up into multiple lines. That's better. Let's test the application. So back in the browser, tab away. Okay, we get the required message. Now if I type A, we get old password is invalid. If I change this to 1234, the error is gone. Beautiful. Now the last part. We want to implement the confirm password validation. Now with confirm password, we need to know about this form as a whole because we need access to two controls, the new password and confirm password. So back to our password validators, I'm going to define another validator. So static passwords should match. Once again, we get an abstract control here. Now in this particular validator, that abstract control should actually be a form group. In other words, we want to apply this validator at the form level. And you know our form is an instance of the form group class. And because form group derives from abstract control, it is an abstract control, so it can be passed by Angular at runtime to this method. Okay? So here we need to get a reference to new password and confirm password fields. So let new password equal control.get new password. And similarly, confirm password. We set this to control.get confirm password. Now, if their values don't match, so if new password dot value is not confirm password dot value, you want to return the validation errors object. So passwords should match, and we set this to true. So basically, any value that resolves to truthy can be used here. But by convention, we use true or a complex object. Now, otherwise, we want to return null. Now, in this implementation, we don't need this else keyword because if this condition evaluates to true, then we'll exit this method. So we can simplify the code like this. Now, finally, let's apply this validator to our form. So back to our component. So just like we can apply validators to each control, we can also apply them to a group. So here, this group method of the form builder class takes two parameters. The first one is this object where we define our controls. And the second one is another object where we add extra stuff to this form group. Now in the comment here, you can see valid keys for the extra parameter map are validator and async validator. So here we can add an object. This object is going to have a key validator, and we set this to our custom validator. So password validators dot passwords should match. And finally, let's go to our template and add the error message. So here's the confirm password field. If this field is touched and is invalid, we render this error if the field has the required error message. Okay. Now, similarly, I'm going to add another div here, and I want to render this only if the passwords don't match. So we can get a reference to our form here. If the form is invalid and it has this error, passwords should match, then we want to tell the user that passwords do not match. And by the way, we need to apply two classes here, alert and alert-danger. Now let's test the application. So back in the browser, I'm going to add 1234 here. For the new password, I'm going to use 1111. We immediately get this error here, passwords do not match. I want to delay this and show it only if the user has put something in the confirm password field. So back here, I'm going to change this ngIf and add another condition. So if confirm password is valid, which means the user did enter a value in this field, but the form is invalid and has this error, then we want to render this error message. Let's try one more time. So 1234, 111. Now we don't get any messages If I tab away, we get this error message, confirm password is required. If I add a different value, we immediately get this error, passwords do not match. And if I change this to 111, all the errors are gone. Beautiful.